El Chapo was one of the most notorious drug lords in history, so the United States finally imprisoned him. Law enforcement counted it as a major victory. Little did they know that his sons would retaliate in the most brutal manner. The sons of El Chapo weren't about to let their father's legacy go to waste, so they took the reins of the Sinaloa cartel, and the United States paid the price in full. What followed has grown to become one of the most devastating public health crises in the United States, the fentanyl epidemic. Let's find out more. El Chapo and sons attacked the United States. El Chapo's sons, Ivan Archivaldo Guzman Salazar, Jesus Alfredo Guzman Salazar, and Ovidio Guzman Lopez, collectively known as Los Chapitos, were groomed from a young age to inherit their father's empire. Their early involvement in the cartel was marked by a combination of privilege and peril as they navigated the treacherous world of organized crime under the watchful eye of their notorious father. The impact of the Chapitos' fentanyl trade on the United States was both profound and tragic. As fentanyl flooded the market, overdose deaths began to skyrocket, with the synthetic opioid quickly becoming a leading cause of drug-related fatalities. The potency of fentanyl, combined with its widespread availability, made it a particularly deadly substance, contributing to a public health crisis that overwhelmed communities and strained resources. The growing fentanyl crisis also had significant economic and social consequences. The surge in overdose deaths placed a heavy burden on healthcare systems, as hospitals and emergency services struggled to cope with the influx of patients. The crisis also had a ripple effect on families and communities, as the loss of loved ones and the stigma associated with addiction took a devastating toll. Despite the efforts of law enforcement agencies on both sides of the border to combat the fentanyl trade, the Chapitos proved to be elusive adversaries. Their ability to adapt to changing circumstances and exploit weaknesses in the system allowed them to stay one step ahead of authorities. They employed a range of tactics to evade capture, including the use of encrypted communications, bribery, and intimidation, ensuring that their operations continued unabated. The Chapitos' expansion of the fentanyl trade also had geopolitical implications, as the United States and Mexico grappled with the challenges posed by transnational, organized crime. The crisis highlighted the need for greater cooperation and coordination between the two countries, as well as the importance of addressing the root causes of the drug trade, such as poverty and corruption. As the fentanyl crisis continued to escalate, the Chapitos' empire grew ever more powerful, cementing their status as key players in the global drug trade. Their ability to innovate and adapt, combined with their ruthless enforcement tactics, ensured that they remained a formidable force, even as law enforcement intensified its efforts to dismantle their operations. As the Chapitos' fentanyl empire continued to wreak havoc across the United States, law enforcement agencies on both sides of the border intensified their efforts to dismantle the cartel's operations. The scale and complexity of the Chapitos' network presented significant challenges, requiring a coordinated and multifaceted approach to combat their influence effectively. Their use of sophisticated smuggling techniques, such as tunnels and drones, made it difficult for authorities to intercept shipments of fentanyl before they reached the United States. Additionally, the decentralized nature of their distribution network, which relied on local gangs and criminal organizations, further complicated efforts to trace the drugs back to the cartel. To address these challenges, law enforcement agencies implemented a range of strategies aimed at disrupting the Chapitos' operations. One key approach was the targeting of precursor chemical suppliers, particularly those based in China. By cutting off the supply of these essential ingredients, authorities hoped to cripple the cartel's ability to produce fentanyl on an industrial scale. This effort required close cooperation with international partners, as well as the implementation of stricter regulations and monitoring of chemical shipments. Another critical component of the law enforcement strategy was the use of intelligence and surveillance to identify and dismantle the cartel's smuggling routes. This involved the deployment of advanced technologies, such as drones and sensors, to monitor border areas and detect underground tunnels. Additionally, authorities increased their focus on financial investigations, targeting the money laundering operations that allowed the Chapitos to conceal and reinvest their profits. International cooperation played a crucial role in the fight against the Chapitos' fentanyl empire. United States and Mexico, along with other countries affected by the cartel's operations, worked together to share share intelligence, coordinate enforcement actions, and strengthen legal frameworks to combat transnational organized crime. This collaboration extended to joint operations, such as the extradition of key cartel figures and the dismantling of drug trafficking networks. In addition to enforcement efforts, there was a growing recognition of the need for a holistic approach to addressing the root causes of the drug trade. This included initiatives aimed at reducing demand for fentanyl and other narcotics, such as public awareness campaigns and addiction treatment programs. Efforts to address poverty, corruption, and lack of economic opportunities in regions affected by the drug trade were also seen as essential components of a long-term solution. The battle against the Chapitos' fentanyl empire was a complex and ongoing struggle, marked by both successes and setbacks because the sons of El Chapo were overly resilient. Ivan, the eldest of the Chapitos, was the first to make his mark within the cartel. Known for his charisma and strategic acumen, he quickly rose through the ranks, earning a reputation as a shrewd operator. His brother, Jesus Alfredo, followed closely behind, bringing his own brand of cunning and ruthlessness to the table. Ovidio, the youngest of the trio, was initially less involved but would later play a crucial role in the cartel's operations. The early 2000s were a period of transition for the Sinaloa cartel as it faced increasing pressure from law enforcement and rival cartels. During this time, the Chapitos began to take on more responsibility, learning the intricacies of the drug trade and the art of survival in a world where alliances were fleeting and betrayal was commonplace. Under the tutelage of their father and other senior cartel members, they honed their skills and expanded their network of contacts, both within Mexico and abroad. As the Chapitos solidified their control over the Sinaloa cartel, their focus on fentanyl production and distribution began to yield significant dividends. The expansion of the fentanyl trade under their leadership marked a new era for the cartel, one characterized by unprecedented profits and a growing influence in the global drug market, causing significant damage to America. The boys are causing just as much damage as their father did during his reign of terror. El Chapo himself is believed to be responsible for the deaths of over 34,000 people. His reign of terror and dominance in the illicit drug trade earned him the distinction of being considered the most powerful drug trafficker in the world. Under Guzman's leadership, the Sinaloa cartel expanded its operations, trafficking massive quantities of cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, and marijuana across the Mexican border into the United States. His organization's influence stretched from Mexico to Central America, South America, and even Europe. Guzman's success was largely due to his ruthless tactics, which included bribery, intimidation, and violence. He was known for his ability to evade capture, earning him the nickname El Chapo, Shorty. His legend grew, and he became a folk hero of sorts in some circles, with many Mexicans viewing him as a Robin Hood figure who provided jobs and economic opportunities in impoverished areas. However, Guzman's empire was built on bloodshed and terror. His organization was responsible for the murders of rival cartel members, law enforcement officials, politicians, and innocent civilians. The violence was often brutal and indiscriminate, with Guzman's henchmen using tactics like beheadings, mutilations, and mass graves to intimidate and control. The Mexican government, aided by the United States, launched a series of operations to capture Guzman. He was first arrested in 1993, but he escaped from prison in 2001, allegedly by bribing guards and hiding in a laundry cart. Guzman was recaptured in 2014, but he escaped again in 2015, this time through a tunnel dug into his prison cell. Guzman's final capture occurred in 2016, when Mexican Marines raided a home in the coastal city of Los Mochis. He was extradited to the United States in 2017, where he faced charges of conspiracy to commit murder, drug trafficking, and money laundering. In 2019, Guzman was convicted on all counts and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. His downfall marked the end of an era in the world of organized crime, but marked the new beginning for his sons, the Chapitos. They now pose a new threat to law enforcement agencies in America. Before setting sights on the United States, the Sinaloa cartel was already dominating the Mexican drug market and many other parts of Latin America. Sinaloa wreaks havoc on Latin America. The war on drugs in Mexico is a complex and multifaceted conflict that has shaped the nation's socio-political landscape for decades, and the Sinaloa cartel has always been in the middle of the conflict. Initiated in December 2006 under President Felipe Calderón, the government's response to the escalating power of drug cartels marked the beginning of a militarized approach to combating organized crime. This strategy, however, has resulted in a cycle of violence that continues to plague the country. President Calderón's decision to deploy 6,500 soldiers to Michoacan in 2006 was a pivotal moment in the war on drugs. This move signaled a shift towards direct military intervention, with the aim of dismantling powerful cartels like the Sinaloa cartel. The operation, however, led to a dramatic increase in drug-related homicides, with over 50,000 deaths reported during Calderón's presidency. The violence was not limited to cartel members. It spilled over into civilian populations, creating a climate of fear and insecurity. Calderón's successor, Enrique Peña Nieto, sought to de-escalate the conflict by focusing on training Mexican forces and reducing direct military engagement. Despite these efforts, violence persisted, with over 23,000 deaths in the first 14 months of his administration. Peña Nieto's tenure was marked by high-profile arrests, including the capture of Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán in 2016. Guzmán's arrest and subsequent extradition to the United States were seen as significant victories in the fight against the Sinaloa cartel, since he was responsible for 35,000 deaths. However, the cartel's operations continued unabated. Andrés Manuel López Obrador, who took office in December 2018, introduced a controversial strategy for peace that included amnesty for low-level drug offenders and the creation of a national guard. López Obrador's approach aimed to address the root causes of violence by focusing on social programs and economic development. Despite these initiatives, violence remained high, and his administration faced criticism for continuing military deployments, which exceeded those during Calderón's term. The government's response to the drug war has been complicated by pervasive corruption within law enforcement and political institutions. Efforts to combat organized crime are often undermined by officials who collaborate with cartels, either through bribery or coercion. This corruption erodes public trust in government and exacerbates the challenges faced by authorities in restoring order. The violence associated with the drug war has had a devastating impact on Mexican society. The death toll is staggering, with over 115,000 deaths reported from 2007 to 2018. The conflict has also resulted in widespread human rights violations, including extrajudicial killings and torture. Vulnerable groups such as migrants and journalists face heightened risks of violence and exploitation, further complicating the humanitarian crisis. High-profile incidents, such as the discovery of mass graves and the abduction of migrants, reflected the severe human rights crisis in Mexico. The role of firearms trafficking, particularly from the United States to Mexico, is highlighted as a contributing factor to the cartel's increasing firepower. The international implications of the Sinaloa cartel's activities are vast and far-reaching, extending well beyond the borders of Mexico. As one of the most powerful drug trafficking organizations in the world, the cartel's influence has permeated various regions, impacting global drug markets and prompting international responses to curb its operations. In Central America, the cartel has established strong footholds in countries like Honduras, Guatemala, and El Salvador. By forging alliances with local criminal organizations, the cartel has secured vital trafficking routes that facilitate the movement of narcotics northward into Mexico and ultimately the United States. This expansion has not only increased the cartel's reach, but has also contributed to the destabilization of these regions, exacerbating violence and corruption. Beyond Central America, the Sinaloa cartel has extended its operations into South America, particularly in Colombia, where it collaborates with local groups to source cocaine. This collaboration reflects the cartel's ability to integrate itself into existing drug production networks, ensuring a steady supply of narcotics for distribution. The cartel's presence in South America highlights the interconnected nature of the global drug trade, with various criminal organizations working in tandem to meet international demand. The cartel's influence is not confined to the Americas. In recent years, it has expanded its operations into Europe, where the demand for cocaine has surged. The cartel's ability to infiltrate European markets is facilitated by its control over key trafficking routes, often utilizing West Africa as a transit point. The United States remains a primary destination for the Sinaloa cartel's narcotics, with the cartel controlling a significant portion of the drug flow into the country. The U.S. Justice Department has identified Mexican cartels, including Sinaloa, as the greatest organized crime threat, with their influence evident in nearly 200 cities across the nation. The global response to the Sinaloa cartel's activities has been impressive, involving cooperation between various countries and international organizations. The Merida Initiative, a U.S. assistance plan, aims to bolster Mexico's law enforcement capabilities in combating the pervasive drug trade. In addition to bilateral efforts, international law enforcement agencies have intensified their focus on dismantling the cartel's operations. Interpol and Europol have played crucial roles in coordinating efforts to track and apprehend key cartel figures, disrupting their networks and seizing significant quantities of narcotics. These efforts highlight the necessity of a coordinated global response to effectively combat transnational organized crime. Despite these initiatives, the Sinaloa cartel's operations continue to pose significant challenges to international security. The cartel's ability to adapt to changing circumstances and leverage new technologies has allowed it to maintain a dominant position in the global drug trade. Technological innovation has been a key factor in the cartel's continued success. The Sinaloa cartel has embraced new technologies to enhance its operations, from the use of encrypted communication platforms to the deployment of drones for surveillance and drug delivery. These advancements have enabled the cartel to stay ahead of law enforcement efforts, maintaining its competitive edge in the criminal underworld. Rivalries within the organization, particularly between factions loyal to Los Chapitos and those aligned with El Mayo, have posed challenges to the cartel's cohesion. However, the leadership has managed to maintain a delicate balance, preventing these tensions from undermining the cartel's overall stability despite all the major arrests over the years since El Chapo was sent to prison. Another high-profile cartel leader, Ismael El Mayo Zambada, was arrested. Zambada, a longtime leader of the Sinaloa cartel, had been on the run for over 20 years, evading capture and building a reputation as one of the most powerful and feared cartel leaders in the world. Zambada's arrest was the result of a joint operation between Mexican authorities and the U.S. DEA. He was subsequently extradited to the United States, where he faces multiple charges related to drug trafficking and murder. Damaso Lopez Nunez, also known as El Licenciado, was a high-ranking member of the Sinaloa cartel. He was arrested in May 2017 by Mexican authorities and also extradited to the United States. Rafael Caro Quintero, a founding member of the Guadalajara cartel, was arrested in July 2021 by Mexican authorities. Quintero, who had been on the run for over 30 years, was wanted in connection with the murder of a U.S. DEA agent, Enrique Camarena. Juan Jose Esparragoza Moreno, also known as El Azul, was a high-ranking member of the Sinaloa cartel. He was arrested in October 2020 by Mexican authorities and subsequently extradited to the United States. The arrests have also sent a message to other cartel leaders and members that they will be held accountable for their crimes. The collaboration between law enforcement agencies across the globe has been key in disrupting the complex networks of these criminal organizations. Despite the significant progress that has been made in disrupting the operations of these cartels, there is still much work to be done. Law enforcement agencies across the globe continue to work together to identify and apprehend cartel leaders and members. In recent years, there has been an increase in the use of technology, such as artificial intelligence and data analytics, to track and disrupt the operations of these cartels. This technology has allowed law enforcement agencies to identify patterns and connections that may not have been apparent before. Keep in mind that the Sinaloa cartel isn't solely responsible for the war on drugs, but it is a major contributor because of El Chapo, his partners, and his sons. Even the fights for territory between Sinaloa and other strong cartels have led to violence and death. Rivals of Sinaloa struggle for power. As the Sinaloa cartel grappled with the aftermath of El Chapo's capture, the stage was set for a brutal and bloody struggle for power. Rival factions, sensing an opportunity to expand their territories, began to challenge the Sinaloa cartel's supremacy, leading to an escalation of violence and a new era of conflict in Mexico's drug war. The Tijuana cartel, also known as the Arellano Felix organization, has long been a key player in Mexico's drug trafficking landscape. Founded in the late 1980s by the Arellano Felix brothers, the cartel quickly established itself as a dominant force in the northwestern region of Mexico, particularly in the border city of Tijuana. This strategic location provided the cartel with direct access to the lucrative drug markets of the United States, making it a formidable competitor in the drug trade. The Tijuana cartel's rise to power was characterized by its ruthless approach to business. The Arellano Felix brothers were known for their violent tactics, employing a network of enforcers to eliminate rivals and maintain control over their territory. The cartel's operations extended beyond drug trafficking, involving money laundering, extortion, and other criminal activities that bolstered its financial power. Despite its early success, the Tijuana cartel faced significant challenges in the late 1990s and early 2000s. A series of high-profile arrests and deaths of key leaders, including Ramon Arellano Felix, weakened the cartel's grip on power. Internal strife and external pressure from rival groups, particularly the Sinaloa cartel, further eroded its influence. However, the Tijuana cartel proved resilient, adapting to the changing dynamics of the drug trade and maintaining its presence in the region. The capture of Joaquin El Chapo Guzman in 2014 presented the Tijuana cartel with a unique opportunity to regain its former glory. With the Sinaloa cartel's leadership in disarray, the Tijuana cartel sought to capitalize on the power vacuum and expand its control over key drug trafficking routes. The cartel's territorial ambitions were fueled by its desire to re-establish itself as a dominant force in the drug trade, challenging the supremacy of its rivals. The Tijuana cartel's strategy involved forging alliances with other criminal organizations to strengthen its position. By collaborating with groups such as the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, the Tijuana cartel aimed to consolidate its power and secure its hold on critical smuggling corridors. These alliances were not without risk, as they often led to violent confrontations with rival factions vying for control over the same territories. In its quest for dominance, the Tijuana cartel also focused on diversifying its operations. The cartel expanded its involvement in the production and distribution of synthetic drugs, capitalizing on the growing demand for substances like methamphetamine. This shift allowed the Tijuana cartel to tap into new markets and increase its revenue streams, bolstering its financial resources and enabling it to fund its territorial ambitions. The Gulf Cartel, one of Mexico's oldest and most storied criminal organizations, has played a significant role in the country's drug trade for decades. Its roots can be traced back to the 1980s, when it emerged as a formidable force in the northeast of Mexico, particularly in the border state of Tamaulipas. The cartel's strategic location allowed it to control key smuggling routes into the United States, making it a major player in the trafficking of cocaine, marijuana, heroin, and amphetamines. In its early years, the Gulf Cartel was led by Juan Garcia Abrego, a notorious drug lord who became the first Mexican trafficker to be included on the FBI's 10 Most Wanted list. Under his leadership, the cartel established a vast network of operations, generating billions of dollars in revenue annually. The Gulf Cartel's success was built on a foundation of political corruption and bribery, which ensured the cooperation of local officials and law enforcement agencies. Following Garcia Abrego's capture in 1996, the cartel's leadership passed to Ociel Cardenas Guillen, who further expanded the organization's influence. Cardenas Guillen was known for his aggressive approach, recruiting a group of corrupt Special Forces soldiers to serve as the cartel's military wing. These soldiers, known as Los Zetas, were instrumental in enforcing the Gulf Cartel's dominance through violence and intimidation. However, the alliance between the Gulf Cartel and Los Zetas was short-lived. In 2010, the Zetas broke away to form their own cartel, sparking a violent conflict between the two groups. This internal split weakened the Gulf Cartel, leading to a series of bloody turf wars that destabilized the region and eroded the cartel's power. Despite these challenges, the Gulf Cartel remained a significant force in the northeast of Mexico. Its ability to adapt to changing circumstances and maintain its operations allowed it to survive in the volatile landscape of the drug trade. The Gulf Cartel's involvement in the power struggle since El Chapo's capture has been marked by a series of strategic moves aimed at regaining its former glory. The cartel's ability to navigate the complex web of alliances and rivalries has allowed it to maintain its influence in the region, despite the challenges posed by internal divisions and external threats. The Juarez cartel, once a dominant force in Mexico's drug trafficking landscape, has a history marked by fierce rivalries and strategic territorial control. Founded in the 1970s, the cartel rose to prominence under the leadership of Amado Carrillo Fuentes, known as El Señor de los Cielos, or the Lord of the Skies. Carrillo Fuentes earned this moniker due to his innovative use of a fleet of Boeing 747 jets to transport cocaine from Colombia to Mexico, establishing the Juarez cartel as a major player in the drug trade. The cartel's stronghold in the city of Ciudad Juarez, located just across the border from El Paso, Texas, provided it with a strategic advantage in controlling key smuggling routes into the United States. This territorial control allowed the Juarez cartel to generate immense profits and exert significant influence over the region. However, the death of Carrillo Fuentes in 1997 marked the beginning of a tumultuous period for the cartel, as internal power struggles and external pressures threatened its dominance. The Juarez cartel's rivalry with the Sinaloa cartel has been one of the most violent and enduring conflicts in Mexico's drug war. The two cartels cartels have clashed repeatedly over control of lucrative trafficking routes, resulting in a bloody turf war that has claimed thousands of lives. The conflict intensified in the early 2000s as the Sinaloa cartel, under the leadership of Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, sought to expand its influence and wrest control of Ciudad Juarez from its rival. Despite the challenges posed by the Sinaloa cartel's aggressive expansion, the Juarez cartel managed to maintain its foothold in the region through a combination of strategic alliances and brutal tactics. The cartel formed an alliance with the Barrio Azteca gang, a powerful criminal organization with a strong presence in both Mexico and the United States. These cartels and more don't just pose a threat to the Sinaloa cartel, but also contribute to the drug epidemic in Latin America and the United States. Thanks for watching. Check out the other cards on the screen.